If you are interested in any of my tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides as well as any future guides that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into what might be the best value in flight simulation hardware, at least in the force feedback arena. The MOZA AB6 force feedback bundled with the MHG Flightstick. That's the kicker, is that this entire thing only comes in at $399 and it also includes a desk clamp system. That's a pretty big, impressive gap when you think about that most premium force feedback hardware is anywhere between $600 and over $1,000 for some products. As I've been saying for quite a while, MOZA is really starting to shake things up by bringing their expertise from the sim racing world into flight simulation, and the AB6 being their mid-range offering now has positioned it to be an extremely accessible option without compromising on quality. So today we're going to unbox this complete bundle, test the force feedback across multiple sims, and really dive into the MHG Flightstick design, as there are a couple things that, at least for me, I wasn't crazy about, but we'll get into those. At the very least, though, I do want to say right out of the gate that this is definitely a fantastic package. Let's get started. So obviously, MOZA always knows how to package their hardware. The AB6 bundle arrives in a very, very clean and well-packaged compartment. Everything's well protected. You got the hard cardboard shelling, and everything is tailored to hold everything in place, so no really big concerns there. Now let's get right into the stuff that everybody's really wanting to know. With the AB6 base itself, this is obviously the heart of the system. The build quality is absolutely exceptional. We're talking full aluminum alloy and high-strength steel construction. The housing is CNC machined, and the fit and finish is impeccable, and the weight comes at 2.95 kilograms. So it's got a very nice sturdy weight to it, but I will tell you it's a significant improvement over the AB9, but as we know, the AB9 is also much more powerful. And we'll talk about my choices on both of those here in just a minute, and which one that I would personally choose. The compact design is one of the AB6's biggest advantages. This thing has a remarkably small footprint compared to the other force feedback bases on the market. The compact size makes it perfect for desk setups where space is at a premium, but don't mistake small for weak. This thing is definitely built like a tank. On the front panel, you've got the programmable buttons with full RGB lighting. These aren't just decorative. Each button supports 16.7 million colors and can be programmed through the MOZA Cockpit software. You can map the common functions like landing gear, lights, autopilot modes, whatever you really need to these buttons, and pretty seamlessly. Below the buttons, you've got the dual analog sliders. These are incredibly useful if you don't have any other kind of configuration, especially when you combine it with the twist grip function that comes with the MHG out of the box. So yes, you do have rudder control if necessary on this device straight out of the box. You don't have to buy any add-ons like we had to with the AB9. So that is another big win in my book. The universal connector on top is designed to work with all MOZA flight sticks and selects third-party adapters. This is one of the things that I will say WinWing hurts themselves by not doing. So that means that you can use obviously any MOZA flight stick as well as Virpil, Thrustmaster, and VKB, just to name a couple. Pretty much anyone who has that same top collar design where the collar is on the flight stick and you have the same serial plug-in, it'll work. And I think that's a really smart move on all these developers that they do that. It keeps the options open and makes it possible to customize the environment as you wish without sacrificing somebody wanting to buy your product. Inside the base, you've got dual high-performance servos motors delivering peak combined torque of 6 Newton meters with a 4.4 Newton meter continuous torque. Now, 6 Newton meters may not sound like a lot, and I will say that coming off the AB9, I was actually very, very impressed with this. I was expecting the force feedback tension to be significantly reduced. I was not expecting it to be as strong as it was, which we'll come back to, when it comes time to my comparison between the AB9 AB9 and the AB6, especially when you're talking about flight simulation. The other thing I do want to mention really quick is in this software, it does show that this can also be used as a shifter, much like the AB9. Now, I have not personally tested this, as currently my driving rig is not set up. I have switched over to flight for the time being, but I will say that in the software, you have the ability to switch it to a shifter. So, you know, whether or not that actually functions correctly, that's untested by me. The base features 15 magnetic encoders, providing exceptional resolution. It uses the standard 65,535 steps of precision. The USB polling rate is at 1,000 Hertz for those who are interested in the technical details, which means absolutely zero perceivable latency. And we'll talk about that when we get into my flight sim experience with it. One really cool feature is the plus minus 20 degree travel range on the pitch and roll axis. This might seem limited compared to the center mounted sticks with a full 360 degree rotation, but for desktop mounting, this is perfect. It gives you precise control without requiring excessive desk space or any kind of weird, awkward arm movements. Now, something to be considered with this is that if you decide to go this route and use a desk mounting system, as I mentioned in my review of the MTQ throttle, is that you want to make sure that you also have a desk mount for your throttle that hangs about the same position. If you are reaching over your desk to get your throttle, when you're in that full range of motion or the higher range of throttle motion while trying to fly the stick as it's hanging off your desk in the reverse, you're going to have some really weird arm torquing and probably some shoulder tension that will make this very uncomfortable. Now, getting into the MHG flight stick, because the grip is obviously the most critical part, as that's where it connects us to the sim. The design language is immediately recognizable. MOZA took inspiration from modern spacecraft and fighter jet controls, and it shows. The one thing that I will say right out of the gate that I was missing when I saw this was the paddle switch that is usually at the base of the flight stick. Most flight sticks have them, and it does come in very, very useful, as there are multiple aircraft that take advantage of that. Whether it be an analog or a button, it still would have been nice to see. But MOZA took the inspiration and took it to the next level, I will say. The construction is a carbon fiber reinforced composite. This material serves two purposes. It's incredibly strong and rigid, perfect for handling the torque from the AB6, and it's lightweight at just 395 grams. The low weight is important because it reduces rotational inertia. The stick responds instantly to force feedback inputs without feeling laggy or sluggish. The grip shape is contoured and fairly ergonomic, but we're going to get into something here in just a minute. Your hand, for the most part, naturally falls into position, but if you're like me and have overly large hands, I found that my index finger, or I should say the base of my palm just behind my index finger, got a little uncomfortable after extended use, just because of the contouring that they've done up there just behind the trigger line. But again, one size can't fit all. I mean, it's just natural. You know, for the larger flight sticks that I've used, I want to state that they're great for me, but for others, you know, getting it into a nice resting position can be very difficult for some others. So, you know, I don't believe that when it comes to hand grip, hand shape, contouring, one size can't fit all. It just can't. And so this one just happened to be one that only slightly caused some discomfort after a while. But again, I have frying pan size hands, so, you know, that's just the way life goes. Now, the inputs on the MHG are absolutely packed with a ton of control options. You've got 4 programmable buttons, 3 5-way switches, 1 3-way switch, Hall effect hat switch, and 2-stage trigger. All that together, we're looking at over 25 assignable outputs. The 2-stage trigger is beautifully executed. I will say that right out of the gate. It feels very light, but has a very crisp break, if that makes sense. For your primary fire button or stabilization control, for example, if you're flying something like the A10C, push through the first stage, and then once you're ready to shoot, you squeeze the trigger all the way down for its final detente and release the rain, if you will. This is ideal for secondary weapons, missiles, or afterburner activation if you want to use it for something like that, depending on what you're flying and what sim. The tactile feedback is spot on. You always know exactly what stage you're at. I will definitely give them credit for that. And the reason why I'm focusing on that, is emphasizing on it, I should say, is that the trigger itself feels light. I don't want to say cheap. It's definitely not cheap. It doesn't feel cheap, but it feels, I don't know how to describe it. It's not cheap, but I hope I'm conveying this correctly. And that's why I put so much emphasis on the trigger system. Now, getting into the feature that we talked about a minute ago that I really appreciate comes straight out of the box is the Z-axis twist for rudder control. However, something that I will always state, twist grips are never going to be better than rudder pedals. So if you have the ability to buy rudder pedals, I highly recommend you go that route, especially if you're flying helicopters. Twist grip and stability control in a helicopter is a pain in the butt and will usually cause a lot of wrist tension and wrist pain over extended use. And when I say extended use, it's really not extended. I'm talking 10, 15 minutes of continuously having to do that. You're going to start to feel it in your wrist pretty quick. So I do want to make that very clear. But rudder pedals, always recommended. However, it is still very nice that this came straight out of the box with a twist grip for the Z-axis and that you don't have to have something else. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop, you combine the twist grip with the flight stick, with the force feedback, with the two sliders, and you've got a complete set. So this brings us to the final point. You can mount it on top of your desk, or you can do the side mount, which I've shown here in the video where it hangs off the edge of the desk. Now, it has a vertical panel that can go between, or a vertical mounting solution that can go between the clamps themselves and the flight grip or the flight base. That way you can move the base up and down to where you want. I kept mine very simple for this because I actually, believe it or not, was standing up while doing this, so it worked kind of perfect, and I wanted to keep the camera view up high enough where you'd get the top-down view. So I intentionally left that off, so before anyone starts criticizing me that you mounted it wrong, I did it on purpose. Okay? Anyways, so the fact that it comes with a desk grip is very, very nice. I'm very glad that they included that right out of the box. Again, they've really created a package that has everything you do need to get going. So the overall experience of flying this, let's get into that. The AB6 uses the MOZA force feedback technology adapted from their sim racing products. First, we'll talk about the force feedback and actually does in the flight simulation. Unlike racing, where force feedback simulates the grip, road texture, flight sim and force feedback is all about control loading. In a real aircraft, the forces you feel through the control column come from aerodynamic pressure or on the control surfaces, G-forces, engine vibrations, etc. The AB6 simulates all of this through the base motors. In Microsoft Flight Simulator, I was doing an absolutely fantastic job of enjoying the hell out of this thing in the Cessna 172. Changing between low and high altitudes, I could absolutely feel the difference. As I got down lower, as I got near the mountains, I could feel all of the different simulation events that were taking place. And this was in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, where I believe the telemetry is actually a bit reduced over the 2024 series of Microsoft Flight Simulator. All in all, I'm going to tell you guys right now, let's just get into the comparisons. All in all, it is a fantastic product. The force feedback was spot on. The navigation system, as far as configuring the device the way you want inside of their cockpit software, was flawless and seamless. Everything from updating the firmware to configuring the force feedback the way you want. Maxing over the force feedback tension, increasing the gain and inertia up to 100%, and you get a very, very stiff feel on the flight stick, but very, very precise. You don't feel like you're fighting anything. You just feel like it's a stiff setup, and I really enjoy that because, believe it or not, those kind of when you can match the precision with that tension, it makes it really, really fun when doing things like air-to-air refueling or doing any kind of precision flying, because you actually have to force your hand, and I say force in a loosely used term, because you can feel the pressure you're applying, and the pressure you're applying matches the input that you're feeling in the simulator, or inducing into the simulator, I should say, introducing into the simulator. So it really helps with that mental connection of how much force do I need to get the maneuver that I want. And it becomes this seamless connection between you and the simulator where you feel like you're one-to-one and on the same page. So obviously that greatly enhances the immersion. The other really cool thing is that switching into the dogfight mode again, it was actually a lot of fun flying the F-16 with this particular model, and I actually took their F-16 grip and put it on there while I was flying the F-16 in DCS World and increased that tension to max. And for those of you who don't know, in the real world F-16, the flight stick barely moves. It is a, funny enough, force feed-in response system. The flight stick only moves, I think, about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch at most in the F-16. It's all based on pressure. If you slam it forward, the aircraft's going to respond as such. If you lightly touch it, the aircraft's going to respond as such. There is a paddle lever, I believe, that overrides it and kicks it into high gear even more so, but that's a whole different tutorial on the F-16 if you guys wish. So, sum up real quick for the comparison between the AB9 and the AB6. I would say that if you're looking for that maximum force feedback, the best you can get, the most strenuous you can put on it, the AB9 is obviously the way to go. But I will say that for most flight simulation purchases, the AB6 will suit you just fine, and you do get more out of the AB6 than you get from the AB9 as far as features. You have the buttons, you have the sliders, you have the Z-axis that comes straight out of the box. So that is obviously a pro. One concern I do have if you're interested in using this as a shifter in something like American Truck Simulator where you have an extended shifting stick, okay, and if you're that person, if you have one or if you're interested in that, then I would recommend the AB9. If you take the AB6 and you put a very long extension shift arm on it for something, again, like American Truck Simulator, it's going to feel very loose, going to feel very wobbly. You're taking your torque point and putting it way up high, and 6 Newton meters just isn't going to be enough where you're going to be able to enjoy that experience. To be completely honest, I wish they would come up with like an AB12 for something like shifting, but the AB9 does work really, really well for extended shifters. So I hope that helps. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. To MOZA, thank you so much for sending this to me. Very, very proud of you guys. You guys are really kicking ass in the flight simulation world. And guys, I cannot stress enough, this is a perfect introduction into force feedback that gives you a little bit of everything, and if necessary, is an all-in-one configuration option. So as always, guys, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.